today's video, we are going to be talking about one of my favorites, Black historical fiction. No, I'm not home. I'm in Panama, but the show must go on. It is Black History Month, and y'all know we talk about Black books all year around on this channel. But during Black History Month, I just want to get just a little bit blacker. Just a little bit blacker. So here we are. First, we're going to start it off with one of my favorites, which is historical fiction. So the first book that I want to talk about is The Book of Night Women by Marlon James. This book I absolutely love because Marlon James is an absolute master storyteller. This is a book that I feel once you begin reading it, you really cannot stop, because the way Marlon James just weaves the story together, everything is connected. So in this story, we are following a girl named Lilith, and Lilith has been born into slavery. She is enslaved on a Jamaican sugarcane plantation, and within this plantation, there are a group of women that are calling themselves night women, and they have been secretly planning a revolt among the slaves. And they feel like Lilith is pretty much the key to making this happen. But Lilith really has her own plans. And honestly, they kind of see Lilith a little bit as like a knucklehead. She is a little bit of a knucklehead, if you ask me. But like, Lilith really just has her own minds. Like, these women know what they want her to do. But Lilith's like, listen, you know, I'm still a young lady, and I kind of want to do this over here. Like, she is really one of those characters that dances to the beat of her own drum, and I really love that so much because it makes the book even more interesting. There's so much drama. There's jealousies going around between the enslaved people. There are, you know, some romances going on. There's a lot of things going on in this book, and honestly, and like I said, Marlon James does not disappoint. He gives us just a little bit of everything. This book definitely gives a lasting effect, and I think that he did an excellent job for him writing these female characters and him himself being a man. The next book I want to talk about is Caul Baby by Morgan Jerkins. And this was Morgan Jerkins' first fiction novel. Her first book was a nonfiction, which was called This Would Be My Undoing, which I enjoyed. So when her fiction novel came out, I was like, oh, I have to read this. And she is another one that did not disappoint. I was highly impressed with the way she wrote this novel. This is following a woman named Layla, and Layla is desperately wanting to have a child. You know, unfortunately, it just doesn't seem to be working out for her. And she gets so desperate that she turns to a family called the Melancons, and they are a prominent family in Harlem known for having Caul. A lot of people in this neighborhood know them as the family that is powerful. They have something called Caul on their skin. Okay, and we're back. My camera actually got overheated from being on the terrace because, y'all, it is hot. It is definitely hot. So I had to bring y'all inside. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So Layla wants to have a child very badly. She decides to call on the Melancon family, who this family is known all over Harlem. And they have this Caul on their body, but the Caul has healing properties. So a lot of people call on them to use their services for healing. So she decides that she wants to go to them so that they can help her have a child. Well, this is not a spoiler. Like, it literally happens at the very, very beginning of the book, but it does not go very well for Layla. And she just completely, like, has a full-on breakdown, as you can imagine, right? Because she wants this so badly. We also follow a girl named Hallow, and Hallow has been given to the Melancon family under very different circumstances. She grows up in this Melancon family. She actually has Caul on her. But she still grows up in this family feeling like she doesn't really fit in. She just feels she just feels out of place in this family, even though she has grown up here. And she has so many questions. And that's all I'm gonna tell you, because I really just want y'all to read this book, because I just feel like this book it doesn't get as much love as it should. And it was just, I read it and I was just like, whoa, okay, Morgan, okay, like this is a solid debut novel. She also has an upcoming book coming in April, I believe, and it's called Zeal. I'm very much looking forward to that, because clearly this woman can write. Okay, so the next book I want to talk about is called Wild Women in the Blues by Denny S. Bryce. This is another historical fiction that kind of flew underneath the radar for a lot of people. But I read this a few years back, and this one is set in 1920s Chicago. I found that interesting because a lot of 1920s jazz age books that I read, a lot of them are set in New York. I was happy to read one that was set in Chicago, just to kind of see how different it was than the ones that are set in New York. But it's actually pretty similar. You know, obviously it's the jazz age, so you have certain lingo. There is all types of illegal stuff going on, you know, with the whiskey and the gambling. So we meet a woman named Honore, and Honore is in Chicago. She's working at this jazz club, which is a black and tan jazz club. And if you don't know what a black and tan club was at that time, it was a club where black and white people were fraternizing. So Honore is working here. She's singing, she's dancing, she's doing all of these things, but it's a lot of stuff going on in the back rooms of this club, and she is completely wrapped up in all of it. Okay, and we also meet in present day, which is 2015. We meet a guy named Sawyer, and Sawyer has come across Honore. At this point, Honore is a very old woman, and she's in her her hospital bed basically. And Sawyer is a film student. Sawyer is banking on Honore having information about a famous filmmaker that was around during Honore's time at this club. This is definitely a novel that is filled with secrets, ambition, because Honore is definitely trying to use her time being in this club, rubbing elbows with Louis Armstrong and this filmmaker and other celebrities that are hanging out in this area. She's trying to use these connections to really get ahead and make a name for herself. But we'll see if that happens. So you'll have to pick up the book to find out. The next book I want to talk about is called The Revisioners by Margaret, Sexton, Wilkerson. And this is a book that is mostly set in 1925. It does also flip forward to the present time as well. So we meet a woman named Josephine, and Josephine owns a thriving farm. And she has been owning this farm for a while because she was able to free herself from slavery by using some special abilities. So yes, there is some magical realism in this book. Just so you know, while owning this farm, a new neighbor moves in across the street, a white couple. And in that couple is a white woman named Charlotte, and Charlotte decides that she wants to try to befriend Josephine, and she begins, trying to come over with her little pies and stuff, like, oh, hey, I'm just trying to, and Josephine is like, not really feeling her like that. But then after a while, Charlotte, kind of weirds Josephine down a bit. And then eventually Charlotte begins to have ties with the KKK. And then I don't even need to tell you really what happens with that situation there, but just say things get a bit sticky. And then we fast forward to the present day, which is 100 years later, and we end up meeting Ava, who is a descendant of Josephine. And Ava is a single mom. She's dealing with a whole lot at this point. And Ava decides to move in with her white grandmother, Martha, who is an old lady, and the grandmother basically pays Ava to stay there and kind of help her around the house and things that she needs. But Martha starts acting a bit erratic at some points. And Ava's like, you know what? I don't know if it's safe for me and my son to even be staying here. One thing that I learned from reading this book is that a lot of times the past tends to repeat itself. Okay? And Ava has to channel some of her own powers to get out of this situation with her white grandmother and the threat that she poses to Ava and her son. This book has a lot to do with the bonds between mothers and their kids, and also how as Black women, sometimes we have to practice all the time we have to practice a level of discernment when it comes to other people that appear to be allies, and then they actually end up becoming complete threats to us. So that is all I will say about that. The next book I want to talk about is Lone Women by Victor Laval. And it is no secret, I absolutely love this book. This book is set in 1915 Montana. And that is the part that really drew me to this story. Well, other than the fact that it's written by Victor Laval, who I absolutely love. But Victor Laval writes this book set in 1915 Montana, which I've never read a book regarding Black people and homesteading ever in life. Okay, so in this story, we meet a woman named Adelaide, and immediately in the first few pages of this book, we know that Adelaide is fleeing California. She sets a house on fire and she flees California with a very big steamer trunk, and she goes to Montana with this trunk. There is a mystery surrounding this trunk because every time it's open, someone disappears. So the reason why Adelaide is traveling to Montana is because she saw something in the newspaper that said that if any person were to come to Montana, tend to the land for about 5 years, then they would be able to own the land that they've been tending to this entire time. Now, Adelaide has been doing homesteading in California where she's from, so she knows that this is something that she can do, and it doesn't say that you have to be a white person, so she jumps on the chance. Well, when she arrives, she is met with as you can imagine, she's not met with all of the friendly faces that you would hope, right? This is a story of sisterhood because there are multiple women in this book that need to lean on each other at different times of this story, and I love that so much. These are women that have different circumstances, different walks of life, but they still need each other at different points of this story. I know I said that this is a historical fiction book, but it is also very much horror. And when people die in this book, they die in very horrific ways, and it is so exciting. I mean, I just love this book so much. I might actually like this one. No, I do love this one more than The Changeling. And The Changeling used to be like up there for me. And then I read this one and I was like, no, I actually really, really love this one. He definitely did an excellent job with these female characters as far as the friendship, female desires, and just all of these things he just does an excellent job with. Okay, and now we have another historical fiction that is involving a slave revolt, and that is going to be The American Daughters by Maurice Carlos Ruffin. This one is actually set in New Orleans, which I really love that aspect of this book because I personally love New Orleans. This book is following a girl named Addie and her mom Sinite. They are both recently sold to a businessman who has a home in the French Quarter, but he doesn't actually live there. He actually lives further into the South, but he has his home and he wants Sinite and Addie to live in this home and to, you know, keep it up so that when he comes there, he already got his people at the house. Half of this book is about Addie and Sinite trying to get free. And then the other half of this book is about the actual American Daughters. And the American Daughters is a very secret group of enslaved women that are on different plantations who meet in secret. How are they meeting in secret if they're enslaved? You know, you really have to ask Maurice Carlos Ruffin. I didn't find that part to be like, okay, so they just roaming around, huh? Okay, cool. But yes, these women are all meeting in secret. The point of them is to undermine the Confederates in any way that they can. They're sharing information and they are making things happen. So they each are listening out, you know, in at their own plantations on, okay, so so so-and-so is about to do this, he got plans to do this, and then they're all sharing information and they're finding out ways of sabotaging them in any way they can. And I love it. And I do wish that there was a lot more of that in this book. Because again, we do spend a fair bit of time before Addie even meets this group of women. Okay, there is also a lot of themes about sexuality in this book. There's a bit of a romance going on here. And during this time, there are also free Black people that are around during this time. And Addie starts to move closer and closer to these free Black people, and it makes her want freedom even more so for herself now that she's seeing how these other Black people are living so freely, and she wants that for herself. So you really have to read the book to get, you know, kind of the whole thing. And then there's also a few bombs that get dropped in this book as well. But yeah, I would say I recommend this one if you're looking for a fairly different slave narrative story, because, you know, it's in New Orleans. It's not, you know, North Carolina, South Carolina. It's in New Orleans. And the enslaved people in this book are doing some very different things than we're used to seeing. I will say that. The next book I want to talk about is called One Blood by Denene Miller. In this book, we follow 3 Black women. And the first one is a girl named Grace. Grace has grown up in the South, and her grandmother that was raising her recently passed away. So she ends up going to live with her Aunt Hattie, who lives up north. While she's up north, she's really like a fish out of water. You know, Aunt Hattie is very much hoity-toity, you know, and she's just constantly nitpicking at Grace, and Grace can't do nothing right, you know. Aunt Hattie is also like the head of teaching these young teenage girls how to be nice, demure, you know, ladies, and all of those things. And then Grace ends up meeting a boy, and you know, things happen, right? Things happen. So that's Grace. Then we meet a woman named Dolores, and Dolores, she's had a hard life. She's had a hard life. She has a husband, and she has a lot of secrets. between her and her husband. She's happy to have her husband, and she does a lot of things to keep him and to keep them two together. She does not care what she has to do. She will do it. And then one day her husband comes home with a baby, and this baby is Ray. Dolores raises Ray as her own daughter. Unfortunately, Ray does not know that she is adopted this entire time. I just love when you look at the three women that are in this book and some of the similarities between them. I would say that they still, all three, have to do a lot of things that they don't want to do. This book talks a lot about specifically being a Black woman and a lot of the things that we have to do that we don't want to do as mothers, as a wife, just because we feel like we have to do these things. Society wants us to do these things, and so we do them to just, conform, basically. And this book really kind of talks about that. And I really enjoyed the conversation around it. I feel like Denene Miller definitely, she dropped some really good gems for us to kind of think about and decide, like, hey, do I really want to be doing this thing that I'm doing? So it's definitely a very good book for a book club because there is great discussion to be had with this book. All right, y'all. So that is going to be it for this video. I really hope that you have enjoyed it. Make sure you give me a thumbs up if you did. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe for more bookish content like this. And I will catch y'all in the next one. Bye.